Welcome into another edition of Indiana Football in Review. John Alden with you as always. Mitchell Paige with us as always on his way up to Indianapolis, currently driving if you're watching this on YouTube. Here to discuss Indiana's overtime loss, heartbreaking overtime loss at that to Illinois, 48-45 in a game that was, I don't even really know where to start with it. It's the type of game that we really haven't seen Indiana play at all this season. We've seen the offense was the dominant part of the game. The defense had their share of issues. They gave up a 15-point lead. They were up 27-12, I believe, at one point. And you fall in overtime. I mean, a myriad of things happened. And Mitchell, I'm sure you've got plenty of thoughts. So I want to go ahead and give you the floor. What's just kind of your overall assessment of what went down on Saturday?
Yeah, it was such a strange game. As you said, Indiana hasn't played like that. They were finally explosive, and we just hadn't seen that at all. It just was really good to see on offense, and I'm excited by what Rod Carey's doing, but some of the worst defense that I think we've seen since the 2014-2015 Indiana Hoosiers.
I know it's weird. I don't know what would – here's one thing that I thought about earlier when I was trying to think of what I would bring up when we were doing this review. It's almost as if the defense hasn't really been in a position to relax with a comfortable lead, other than when they're playing teams like Indiana State, that they had the ability to feel like they could let off the gas in a game like this when you get a lead like you were against Illinois on the road. And that gave Illinois an opportunity to get back into the game and eventually win it. And it's interesting how, and again, that's just kind of a way that my mind works, the kind of speculation on what may be going through the defensive players' minds, because usually the game rests on what they're doing. And this is a game where it was all about the offenses. John Paddock for Illinois was great. He's kind of a breakout star right now in this back half of the Big Ten football season. And Brendan Sorsby, he's finding his footing for Indiana when at the beginning of the year, a lot of people thought that Taven Jackson was going to be the future for this football team. So a tale of two offenses that a lot of people probably weren't expecting, that to be the storyline from this game.
Yeah, I would hope that there was no let up in the defense.
Of course.
If that's the case,
that's a problem. And of course, Tom Allen afterwards said it's unacceptable, and that's kind of what makes me think, like, did he not have his defense ready for if the offense was going to be ready to carry the team today,
Yeah, and it typically doesn't work like that. You guys feed off each other's energy. I'm talking offense and defense. But while the offense is out there, you're just so focused on what you're doing, and to give up. Did that kid end up with 600 yards of?
He had 507 yards. 507. Yeah, I think it was close to a school record for Illinois.
Yeah, and you just it made them look foolish. All 11 guys. It was truly a really, really bad effort from the defense, which it is supposed to be our calling card. That's what I take away most of it. This is supposed to be the kind of pride of the team. We're going to start on defense. Even when we weren't scoring a bunch of points, our defense is going to hold us in it. And then to have your backs against the wall and have breakdown after breakdown on defense really throw the season away, it feels like. The offense did plenty to win the game. You finally get some explosiveness, and then missing tackles, guys running wide open all over the place. And it wasn't like they were doing anything crazy. It wasn't trick plays. It wasn't big, deep crossing. These were just kind of normal football plays, and it looked like there was 15 guys on their team on offense. Like, they just had guys open all over the place all the time. It was just really disappointing. And then I don't want to talk about any coaching or anything, but it just feels like every time something like this happens, there's always a pointing of the finger than anything. If you see where I'm going, you've had a team that's been really bad all season, and you finally have some momentum, and they play terrible. Okay, it's the players that make the plays, but I don't know. It's a weird feeling in Bloomington right now. It's got to be.
It is weird because obviously you have 2 games left on the season, 2 trophy games. You come home next week to face Michigan State for the Spittoon, and then, as always, you travel to West Lafayette for the bucket game. And at that point, if you were to win those games, you're 5-7, 1 win away from bowl eligibility. And there have been situations in the past where, because there's a lack of teams that are bowl eligible, that sometimes 5-7 teams can sneak in, and obviously that's not something you want to hang your hat on. But if you're thinking about what does this team have left to play for, if you want, obviously the trophy games, take with that what you will, especially the Purdue game, that's always important. But if you win these last 2 games, and let's just say they get that opportunity to get to the postseason by, which it's usually academic scores. However, I can't remember how they, Mitchell, you would know more than I would.
Yeah,
I
think that is correct. It's like based on team GPA, and it's something like that. Yeah.
And again, so we don't know if that's going to happen. There's still, plenty of games left to be played. Teams that are still fighting for bowl eligibility. But even though it's not something fans, I would say, would be super excited about, being a 5-7 team and playing in the postseason, we talked last week about the importance of, if you're going to find something from this season to build upon for next year, when you kind of have a favorable schedule. And again, we don't know what's going to happen in the off season, so it's kind of tough to really pinpoint where things might be. But the immediate picture, if things play out for, in your favor these last 2 games, having those extra reps, getting to play in a game like that, when leading up to what would be next year, when you want to, I guess, increase your goals and that kind of stuff, that's the most important thing if you're given that opportunity. But we obviously don't know if that's going to happen yet.
Yeah, a lot of it is just about the momentum going into next year. From a fan perspective, pure fan perspective, I kind of feel like they've missed the chance to satisfy the fan base. I just think they've missed too many opportunities. And even 5-7, you're not going to get a bunch of fans that are gung-ho, can't wait for next year. But the fans don't play. So having a little bit of internal drive, it is 2 trophy games. Having 2 trophies in the building at the same time matters. It really does. And I know in today's world, maybe some of those traditions are being lost a little bit, just with the transfer portal and guys jumping ship from Indiana to Purdue and Purdue to Indiana. You kind of, like, I can't imagine ever transferring to Purdue. But now
that always threw me off. I can't remember. There was a defensive player, and it was an important piece to one of the 20. I think it was the 2020 team. I wish I remembered his name.
Yeah,
he was actually a quarterback in high school. You know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, Reese. I can't remember his last name. Why can I not? I can't. That's so bad.
But yeah, I think he might have been Indiana Mr. Football, came to Indiana, transferred to Purdue.
Yeah, played opposite of Taiwan Mullen. Sometime was in that little nickel spot. Reese Taylor is his name.
Yes, I think. Reese Taylor.
Yeah, and then he transfers to Purdue, and I don't even think he played that much at Purdue. But it just is, in today's world, maybe loses some of it. But we've seen what happens. I think it was 3 years ago now, when you just totally give up on the season. When you call it quits and you lose by 40 to Rutgers, that can happen against Michigan State. They've got a lot of really good athletes. I think that they're coached really poorly, but they have good athletes that can beat you. And they've shown that they can beat you because they've played a lot better over the last couple weeks. You go out and lay just an absolute stinker against them, and have a Purdue team that comes in that also isn't very good.
For one.
But, yeah, not very good, but playing a lot better. There's potential if you don't show up and fight. I mean, we could get run out of the building in both of these games. And when you're sitting there in January and maybe even into February, when you're not thinking about, no fans are thinking about football all the time, but you're in a winter workout at 6 a.m., It's a lot easier to get up and work hard when you've got some wins. You've shown some fight. You've shown some pride, which I think they've done. They played awful on defense. That happens, but I don't think that was due to lack of pride. The lack of pride will come in if you come out in the last 2 games, knowing the bowl games are probably out of the question. The fan base is still going to be semi up in arms no matter what happens. If you can come out, show some fight, win the last 2 games of the season, we talk a lot about momentum, I think, all season. That's been the big word for me, just trying to find some because there hasn't been any. 2 wins starting with Michigan State just sets the program in a completely different trajectory than losing these 2 games and continuing the seeming like free-falling nature of the program.
And I'll go ahead and say this, and Mitchell, you don't have to weigh in on this unless you want to, but I think
I know where you're going, I think.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I figured. I think the only way that Tom Allen keeps his job is if he wins both of these last 2 games. It doesn't matter if you beat Michigan State, lose to Purdue, or vice versa. I don't care if it's the bucket game. You have to at least, I think the overall body of work, at least from the back half of the season, is justified if you're able to finish your season winning. I guess it would be 3 of your last 5 games, or maybe 4 of the last 5. I can't think off the top of my head. Or it would be 3 out of the last 5.
3 out of the last 4.
And depending on, and especially if you're able to do both of these in dominant fashion, I think that's worth something as well. Obviously, we're yet to see how these 2 play out, and we'll talk about them as they happen. But we've seen the differences. Obviously, Tom Allen made the decision to get rid of Walt Bell, the big decision in the middle of the season, and bring in Rod Carey, and we're seeing that pay off. There's no way in hell Walt Bell would have ever hung 48 points on Illinois, or 45, excuse me, if Walt Bell was still the offensive coordinator. We're seeing that pay off right now. So Tom Allen, he's done something this season to at least show that he cares, and he's trying to boost this program. But he has to finish the season strong, I feel like, if he's going to keep his job. And I feel like he's probably aware of that as well.
Yeah, he would be head in the sand if he didn't at least feel some pressure, which I think is – it all comes – I'm going to keep using the word. It's going to be annoying. I'm going to say it until your ears bleed. This is about momentum. This is about momentum for everyone in the program. If you can't find a way to probably, as you said, win these games, they're momentum killers in a program that doesn't have any. Can't afford to lose any. And I hate to restart, but I mean, it just is.
I know you hate to. I'll let you finish. I got some thoughts on that afterward. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. The free fall has just been nonstop. It's 1 step forward and 4 steps back. For the last couple seasons, and you just have to. I will agree. The pressure has never been higher, just because of how things have gone. There's been a very little hope for a very long time, and I think I've said this before, but IU football fans may not be as many in number as some other programs, but the diehards are as good of fans as you're going to find. They know what it's like to go through it a little bit. So when you lose kind of the hope and the confidence of the true diehards that are willing, I think, to give a little more leeway than anybody else, maybe any other program in America, when you lose them, it's really hard to win them back, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And one thing you said that I tried interrupting you on, yes, it does kind of stink to restart, but I do think if you're going to restart, this upcoming season isn't necessarily the worst time for it to happen, because there's going to be so many new things going on in college football beginning new next year, especially in the Big Ten. You're bringing over 4 teams from the West Coast. You're no longer going to have divisions. You're going to have the 12-team playoff. Not that Indiana is going to be competing in it anytime soon. But there are just so many new things going on in college football that teams in the Big Ten especially, and the SEC, I guess for that matter, are going to have to navigate. And if Indiana does end up making that change, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, just because it's a fresh start with all new things going on. And again, I don't know what the best move is. I'm not an athletic director, but it's nice to just potentially have those two things coincide if they do. But I don't know. There's not much else to say about it other than that, though.
Yeah, it was just, I mean, overall, just really disappointing. You finally find some footing, score a bunch of points. Donovan McCulley is getting better and better and better. I would die to see him and Cam Camper playing opposite one another. I still think Cam Camper is one of the better receivers that have come through Indiana in a while. We just haven't been able to really see it because
he's just been injury prone,
decimated by injuries. But giving our guys a chance, I think the receivers have really come on. We found something with Trent Howland. He runs really hard downhill. I think we've been more physical up front on the offensive line, which we hadn't seen in a long time. So again, just really disappointing to look a little lost. We'll put it nicely on defense. Hopefully, Michigan State does not have, and I think the Illinois quarterback was phenomenal. Every ball that he threw was right where it was supposed to be. He was making the right reads. I don't think Michigan State has that on the roster. So, with that being said, hopefully we'll get a little more simple play calling from the Spartans, make it a little easier on the Hoosiers, and we can get turn things around and hopefully keep the pedal to the metal on offense. And need a big week. I cannot imagine what practice will be like, man. It's going to be a big week.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We'll be back to talk more about this as things happen these next couple of weeks. Indiana, Michigan State coming up next for the Spittoon in Bloomington, also senior day. And then we'll also have the bucket game in West Lafayette going on the week after that. So thanks for checking out, another recap on Hoosier Illustrated. Be sure to check out everything else we got going on, especially with basketball. And that's Bloomington's calling card, as we always say. As much as we want football to prevail, you won't stop basketball season for coming around. So, but thanks for checking out this episode. Also, check out Out of Touch, releasing weekly on Spotify and YouTube every Wednesday. So, we appreciate everybody who's been checking that out so far. So, for Mitchell Paige, I'm John Alden, and we will talk to you next week.